Hello everyone. Happy to be here. I hope you hear me well, not too loud. This will be my first time speaking with a stationary microphone, so I hope it goes well. Thank you for joining. I'm happy that you chose to join my session. I know that there is a high competition in the program, and I was lucky to get the first spot after the lunch. So I hope you won't fall asleep despite my talk being filled with some pretty complex concepts and ideas. I will try to make them sound easier for you and for myself as well. So yes, Raul already announced the topic is maximizing value within evolutionary org design. And if some parts of this title does not sound familiar to you, if you're not very much into org design, if you doubt what an evolutionary org design is, I hope we will get it resolved by the end of this talk and by the end of the following Q&A. Few words about myself. My name is Denis. I'm agile enthusiast since 2014, working in the IT and industry surrounding IT since early 2010s. I'm currently based in Krakow, Poland, and I arrived yesterday evening here. I'm currently combining several occupations which actually help me to have more observations and also to have more practice with the topic of org design. So I'm a full-time agile coach at the company called Yassir. This is one of the fastest growing North African startups providing ride-hailing, groceries and food delivery, and since recently financial services. I'm also trainer and consultant together with my partners at company Core Actors, where we mostly deliver on-demand facilitation and IC Agile certified classes. Yeah, and I'm also org design and agility consultant in my own company called Agile Expat. Let's cut it. Yeah. And here are some of the clients I worked with over the last 8 years. Some of the examples I will be coming up with are based on their real stories. But of course, there is only one company which gave an explicit agreement for their story to be shared. So I will talk in more details about their story. So let's start with the very beginning, with the original promise of Agile, at least as I always understood it, coming from a business side. So amongst all the things that have been written in the Agile Manifesto back in 2001, I always liked this principle, which even didn't make it to the list of key values. And the principle sounds as our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So for me, there were several things that were standing out in this principle. First of all, valuable software, not just any piece of software. Second of all, early and continuous delivery. And last but not the least, satisfying the customer, which makes you have money to deliver software. To put it another way, the idea behind it was that through frequent delivery, which we make possible through various principles and organizational adaptations, we enable shorter feedback loops, which result in better understanding of the unrealized value we have. As a result, we have a better chances to close the customer satisfaction gap. And for us as a business, that means that we have higher return on investment. So that made sense for all sides of the story, for business, for customer, also for the technology. And one of the changes which Agile Manifesto and practices which were united under this umbrella like Scrum brought to companies was, for example, cross-functional teams. The sudden change from functional silos of Java engineers, front-end engineers, C# engineers, testers, etc., towards cross-functional teams who combine all of these people in a single team to deliver things faster. That was a very quick intro. We already lost one person. This is okay. So, organizational design. Why organizational design and what does it have to do with agility? I tried to provide a systemic view on that perspective. So, the question I always had working in product companies, and just a disclaimer, most of my career I spent working in companies of a size from let's say 50 people to 800 people, and who were focused on delivering some piece of product, some internally developed product, not an on-demand delivery, not an outsourcing, not an outstaffing, mostly product companies. And many of these companies, as their products were getting more successful and getting more customer traction, and as a result generating more money, they were automatically scaling, like getting bigger, hiring as crazy, and many of the original benefits of Agile, which they really enjoyed, were becoming less and less visible throughout the organization. So the systemic view which I suggest we take on the organizational design is very well described by this STAR model of Jay Galbraith, which basically says us that when we talk about organizational design, we should take 5 key aspects of it. The strategy, so the direction where the company is going, the structure, so to put it short, how power is distributed within the organization. The flow of information, so the processes and how the information is accessible to different people. Rewards, so how people are motivated to do their work and how they are rewarded for doing good job or bad job. And last but not the least, people, like everything, their skills, their mindsets, the relationships between them. So organizational design supposes that we take a look at all of these aspects in a connection to each other, not just in isolation. And this is what I basically like to do, and this is what my whole talk will be about. So typical approach to scaling I saw, and probably you see it also in your organizations, it looks like that. If we are talking about some big bank, every red square you can see here is usually represented as a standalone product. Like our, I don't know, billing is a separate product, our authorization service, authentication service is a separate product, and we have products everywhere. Every microservice, every part of our architecture suddenly becomes a product, which leads to many consequences. So first consequence is that if your company is using something like Scrum, or at least is trying to do Agile, the number of products automatically generates the number of product backlogs. So the more products you have, the higher is the number of product backlogs you have, right? That makes total sense. And by the way, I'm going to use the language of causal loop diagram from systems modeling to describe this idea. But if, in case you're not familiar with it, please don't feel uncomfortable. I will try to walk us step by step through it. So having a higher number of product backlogs has some consequences with it. First consequence, which I will be talking a lot about, is that typically when we have more product backlogs, we suddenly have, and we need to deliver something for our end customers, that typically implies pieces of work going through multiple backlogs. As a result, after some time, and yeah, these two parallel lines here represent delay, the number of product backlogs after some time increases the amount of cross-product dependencies we have. And this, as a result, decreases our customer lead time. So everything we have, it takes suddenly longer to deliver. One friend of mine has a story as he was consulting one very well-known German company, which I will not name. And at some point, they had a regulatory requirement to add the field for entering passport data across all of their user interfaces, in mobile application on both platforms, in web UI, in personal area on the website. Any guesses how long did it take them to make it happen?
2 years.
You heard this story somewhere, right? It was exactly 2 years.
It was a guess.
It was a very precise guess. It took them 2 years, while the original regulatory requirement was that they have only 6 months to implement that. And this was just adding one field across several user interfaces and several databases. Insane, for me at least. So, of course, if we translate everything we do into money, and let's say the regular cross-functional team we already talked about. So regular cross-functional team consists of some people. All these people cost us something as a company, right? We pay them money every month. So we can translate every sprint or every day of their work into a sum of salaries per day of every team member, right? So if we have a team which costs us, let's say 10,000 euros per sprint, so back in the early days when they were able to deliver everything themselves, like it would take them one sprint or 10,000 euros to implement something. Now, as we suddenly have this long line of dependencies and long lines of work needs to be done across several sprints, the cost of the same feature suddenly goes up. Which means that unless we are not in a magic land, the return of investment on this feature suddenly goes down. Everything we do takes longer, it costs us more, but it still brings us back the same revenue. The other part of the puzzle is that, of course, if you are doing a real Scrum, the more product backlogs you have or the more products you have means that you also need to have more product owners, right? Because every product needs to have a product owner. And moreover, if you have many product owners, like more than 5, as we typically are told, then you also need to start hiring managers for product owners because you can't efficiently manage more than 3 to 5 people. So if you have 10 product owners, you need 2 VP of products. If you have 15 product owners, you need 3 VP of products, etc. Which altogether, of course, automatically makes your employee headcount go up and your return on investment go down even further because you need to pay more money for the employees that you have now. And of course, if we are talking about a really serious big company, so now as you have so many cross-product dependencies, you also need to start hiring some people who will take care of coordinating those dependencies. Some project managers, some delivery managers, so these people will even further increase your employee headcount and even further decrease your return on investment. And this is what I call the systemic dynamics of scaling if it's done not very consciously, which is what I honestly wanted this talk to be an alarm of. And usually when we're using systems thinking or systems modeling, the whole purpose of doing it is not only to better understand the situation, but also to understand where is the leverage which we can apply to improve the behavior, to change the behavior of a system in a way that we suddenly start getting results which are more favorable to us. When it comes to this picture we have here, so the easiest way to let's say, to untangle all this cycle is to, change the way you define your products. So if you change the width or depth, if you may call it, of product definition, you may suddenly end up having less products, less product backlogs, less product owners, less cross-product dependencies. They will be still within product dependencies, but this is a different beast. And the typical implications of narrow product definition look like that. So these are 2 dependency boards of big companies I worked with. It's not really visible, so I will try to zoom it in. So every sticker here, it's from Miro. Every sticker here stands for an individual team member. Every square stands for a team, and every red line you can see here stands for an external dependency which these people have in order to get their work done. As you can see, even from such a distance, there are many of them. The same here, this is a dependency board from PI planning. So all these black lines represent some dependencies to other squads which team had for their quarter roadmap. And in my opinion, this all is a result of narrow product definition, which can be easily changed because product is, let's be honest, typically when we talk about big companies, product is a very subjective thing. Product is some artificial definition we come up with. We may call some very small thing as a microservice a product, or we can call a bigger thing a product. But it brings a lot of implications on the way we structure our organization. So there are a few advices of mine when it comes to products. First of all, if we have here people whose company is still less than not more than 4 to 5 teams, most likely you have only one product, and most likely you don't even need to start thinking about scaling in a sense of multiple backlogs, multiple product owners, etc., etc. How to make it work with multiple teams addressing the same backlog, I will mention. But if you know frameworks like LESS or Nexus, you're probably familiar with these solutions. Second of all, second statement based on my experience, even if you have 50+ teams, as I saw in some companies, you are very unlikely to have 50+ products. The fact that you hired more people and united them into groups of 5 to 7 people does not mean that you automatically have the equal number of products. Real product is something tightly associated with your revenue streams, also known as what your customers are paying for. So in case you are struggling, in case you have something which is called a product, but you struggle to create a strong vision and strategy for it, this is unlikely product. This is probably some artificial product that you created. Moreover, what complicates the situation even further, products are not static. Like you typically have, every product has some kind of life cycle. And by the way, that becomes easier to understand when you start thinking in real products which people pay for. Because the easiest way to identify where your product is on this graph is based on revenue it generates. So this is a known concept in the product management world. But in case you've never heard about it, it basically describes the life cycle that almost every product goes through. It's starting with introduction. So when we invest money into developing it in order to come up with some solution for an existing pain, and then we are trying to get some traction. So it's called product market fit. After you get the product market fit, you try to scale it, and this is where usually your revenue skyrockets and where you have the phase of growth or hypergrowth. And as the nature of things describes to us, at some point your revenue growth will stall. So it will slow down first and then stall and then decline. And this is typically called a maturity stage. Of course, if you have product portfolio, every product is in a different stage of a life cycle. And this leads us to my first idea. So if after revisiting the width of your product definition, after revisiting the number of products you really have, you understand that you actually have several products. Most likely, each of these products are at different life cycle stage. And each of these products being in a different life cycle stage most likely means that you need different kind of processes and structures around this product, which I will focus on more now. So, how is it going so far, by the way? Is it comprehensible? Okay, yeah. Because I'm just thinking that given how many things I'm putting out here, in case you have some questions or clarifications, you may feel free to raise your hand straight away. Because it will, if you lose the point here, it will be difficult to get the point further. So, getting back to systems thinking approach. So in systems thinking, we typically analyze things from a perspective of objects and their relationships, resulting in some outcomes. And when we talk about systems that we want to analyze, we typically want to have a clear understanding of their optimizational goal. So what is the outcome or quality that this system is expected to produce? Let's say if we are talking about the system called product company, the quality that is expected is that it can produce product with quality, being able to adapt to external changes, and also be able at the same time to retain employees it hires and generate revenue for its shareholders or investors, of course. If we talk about system, I don't know, family, then depending on what kind of life stage your family is at right now, you may be focused on either raising the children or getting the place to live in, or maybe to just enjoying life if you are in your later days of life. When we talk about organizations, and when we talk about organizations as systems, so there may be various system optimizational goals they may aim for. One I will mostly focus on today is adaptivity, because adaptivity stands for the same thing as agile or agility. Being agile means being adaptive. Being adaptive means being able to react to changes around you as soon as possible with the lowest switching cost. Therefore, like every organization should also ideally have an optimizational goal, and leadership of an organization should ideally have a clear idea of what their optimizational goal is. Otherwise, they may be making some changes without a long-term vision or long-term goal. So getting back to the product life cycle. This red line here, and this is, by the way, not something I created. I think this is the idea that was suggested by Roman Pichler, which you probably all know. His statement was as follows, and I agree with it, that depending on where your product is in its life cycle, your effort on discovery will change. So when you're in earlier days, when you're still looking for a product market fit, or when you are trying to capitalize on the product market fit you found with the growth, you invest more into delivery. You continuously experiment with ideas, you continuously conduct customer interviews, you continuously try out some new things through A/B testing, etc. And this is why on this graph you see that closer to the left part, the level of this red line is high above. So therefore, adaptivity is something that we're interested about as a company. In the later stages, when we know that when our product stops growing, unless we want to prolongate its life cycle, we typically decrease the amount of discovery because we already know what our customers want. The customers who are paying us money provide us with enough revenue, and we are just focused on delivering what they ask us for. So, from the organizational design perspective, what would optimizing for adaptivity require? Let's take a look at, for example, motivation. My experience tells me that the best results when it comes to adaptivity come when you optimize reporting structure towards your product landscape. So when the way people, well, let's say you have a team which is working on a product, or a set of teams which is working on a product. So you don't want them to be reporting to someone outside who doesn't care about the success of this product. You want them to report to a person who is focused on that product. Even if this is a technical reporting line, you may still want to have someone like head of engineering for a specific product, not an overall head of engineering. Like, for example, here, this is the first time I'm bringing up the example of a company called PandaDoc, which I will be focused on in the later part of my talk. And as you can see here, so at some point, the company was spread across 5 key product areas. Each of these product areas, which were called application core, platform, solutions, etc., each of these product areas was focused on delivering features and delivering product for a specific type of customer. So API and integrations were focused on user personas who were using our product through backend. Solutions were focused on delivering new solutions for people using it through UI, for example, sales teams, HR teams, etc. And application core was focused on making sure it all works properly and smoothly. One thing I forgot to mention, so PandaDoc is a document workflow automation software. So therefore, when we talk about solutions, we talk about different use cases for HR teams, sales teams, etc. So each of those product areas had a product owner and engineering director. And all the engineering managers and product managers within this domain, they were reporting to these people, not to someone outside. And these 2 people, they were like mini CTO and mini CEO of this part of the product. They were focused on making this product successful. So they were taking the company strategy for the year, and they were translating it into actionable goals and steps for their part of the product. And all engineering managers were reporting to engineering director of that domain. All product managers were reporting to the product owner of that domain. And in this specific situation, product owner is the guy. It's not product manager and below them is a set of product owners, but the other way around. There is a product owner who actually works with the backlog on the whole product level, and there is a set of product managers who help them to do the discovery, clarify the requirements, and then work directly with teams in order to deliver it. But I will tell more about it later. Let's talk, for example, about optimizing for adaptivity from a strategy perspective. So if you know that you want to be adaptive, it probably doesn't make sense for you to have a too long planning cycles. You don't want to have a well-defined product backlog for 6 months from now. You may prefer to have something like a clearly defined set of OKRs for the next 3 months, but the backlog only for next month, for example. And this is also how we were working in this company. So we had, this is the screenshot from the OKR session we had within one of these domains. And after drafting some objectives and key results for the next 3 months, we just generated a high-level list of features we would like to deliver, but without going too far into details, without doing any dependencies mapping, without doing anything like that. Because we knew that 1 month from now, everything can change, and all the work we will do now in order to dig deep will go into a garbage bin, which means that, once again, the time we invested in it, converted into money, was spent for nothing, and our return on investment went down. From a structure, like you probably, when you're optimizing for adaptivity, and this is what many of us, like Agile coaches or Scrum Masters, focus on, we want to develop the culture of participative decision-making. And for example, in these specific companies, besides developers directly being involved in the discovery process, involved into customer interviews, we let developers choose which team do they want to join. So we were forming new teams through self-design exercise where they were presented with some rules and limitations of like what's the optimal size of the team, what's the skill set of each team, and they were free to choose which team to join. By the way, I have a separate talk on that on YouTube from another conference where you can find it. You may scan the QR code probably later. We will be sharing the slides, right? Okay. When it comes to processes, probably you want to have a free flow of information and you want to have structures and processes which enable learning organization. So in this specific company, with company scaling from 5 teams to 50 teams, we still had a single sprint review, not like 50 sprint reviews or like 10 sprint reviews. And we also had multi-team product backlog refinement and multi-team sprint planning within each of these domains. I will dive a bit deeper into that later. But on the left here, you can see the board which we used to visualize the flow of backlog items throughout the whole process, from ideation, through product backlog refinement, then through sprint planning, and then towards the sprint goal and highlighting whether the sprint goal has been achieved or not. Another idea which is important is that product lifecycle, of course, is not static. It might change over time. This was the case with this company. Yes?
With your previous slide on the learning organization, I'd be curious on cross-learning across the products.
Yes.
Because if you build solutions based on the core, then any development of the core needs to be somehow as a know-how propagated into this area.
Yeah, and this is a good point because that brings us back to the topic of dependencies. So policies on, for example, service ownership or something like that is also the way you can change your organizational design. In this company, we had this core domain which was developing shared services like, for example, billing, authentication, etc. But teams from product domains, they were not prevented from contributing to those services. So in case they needed to change something in, let's say, authentication service for the feature they're developing, they were not creating a task in the authentication team's backlog and waiting for it. They were delivering it themselves. And if they were, for example, lacking expertise, they were inviting people from that team to the product backlog refinement to ask questions. They were inviting a person from that team for a whole sprint to be a traveler who would help them to navigate this change. Or they might have created an RFC document with suggested architecture change for review by that team. But by allowing each feature team to change whatever they need wherever they need, we were cutting down actually the lead time of the delivery. I hope this answers your question.
No.
No? Okay. Can you clarify then?
The question is the other way around, is how do teams that use internal the core app that you have in the center, how do other teams that rely on these core learn about new features? Because in the sprint review with those 50 people, something on a Zoom call, the learning experience seems to be quite small.
Okay, yeah. So first of all, of course, when there was some significant big change coming, there were additional sessions held to do this. And even if the team was planning to do some big change, they might have invited some team representatives to their refinement for that purpose. Second of all, this is thing to mention. Of course, our sprint review, which was at top around 200 plus people, it was not like a single call where you have everyone presenting one after another. We were utilizing the open space format where we had an agenda with several parallel slots. The teams were pitching the topics they will be presenting in the introduction part of the sprint review, and then participants were free to join whatever room they want, depending on whether the topic is relevant to them or not. Okay, speeding up a bit. So, of course, life cycle stage is not static, and this is what we soon understand with one part of our organization. At some point, we decided that one of the use cases we are delivering for sales teams, we want to deliver not to SMEs, as we were doing before, small and medium enterprises of 10 to 50 people, but to big corporate clients of 50 plus licenses. And these people, they have completely different demands. So instead of having frequent updates and new interesting features every now and then, they wanted to have delivery more rarer, like once in a month or once in a quarter. They wanted it to have well described, and they wanted to go through a cycle of education for their internal users. Therefore, suddenly, optimization goal for one of our products have changed, and we had to change also the rules. For example, we had to introduce the release train, we had to introduce an additional role of person who was describing all these updates into a release document and educating the users on the customer side. So this was all changed within the same product, within few months after we suddenly changed the strategy. So the optimizational goal is never static. And of course, if at some point the optimization goal of your products changes from adaptivity to, let's say, predictability, having a longer planning cycles, having something like PI planning and very detailed quarterly planning suddenly becomes okay. So the key point here is it's not like single backlog is good and multiple backlogs is bad. PI plannings are good and OKRs are bad or something like that. Is that it depends. It depends on the optimizational goal you have as an organization. And the optimization goal you have very often depends on the product life cycle you're in right now. Yeah, and of course, if at some point you suddenly decide to extend your products by pivoting or by introducing some new capabilities, you will need much more discovery investments again, and your optimization goal may also switch back to adaptivity. So, which means that you will need to roll back, and as we know, any change in the organization happens with a big resistance and takes a lot of time. So yeah, our products are not static and their life cycle is not linear, therefore the org design should evolve over time too. And here we come to a more detailed description of example of PandaDoc, which I will try to cut short so that you still have time for your questions. So back in late 2019, when the company suddenly understood that there is a big market in front of it and they can grasp a lot of revenue from it, they looked like that. They had 4 units which were already cross-functional by then, but each unit had their own product owner, their own backlog, and they were already realizing that things are not moving as fast as they want, and it takes them a lot to to pin down the opportunity they find. So they wanted to change it, and they decided to appeal to some consultants, including myself. And yeah, they decided to do it in a conscious way. So what we did with them, first of all, we had a mixed group of people, not only C-level, but also people from development, people from product, people from marketing, people from sales. And we guided them through the topic of like systems thinking. We had some causal loop diagrams created to describe the existing problems they have, and we helped them to consciously choose the optimizational goal they aim for. After that, when they decided that they want to have single backlog and multiple teams delivering this backlog, because their goal is adaptivity, we helped them with like educating other people who were not part of this class, for example, through Lego for Scrum. workshop. And we helped them with hosting an offline self-design session where they were pitching the new structure, pitching the future structure of teams, and people were choosing which team they want to join. 2 years later, they understood that after they grew from 7 to, I think, 12 or 15 teams, they understood that working with single backlog becomes too difficult, especially for the product owner who was also the CTO and co-founder of the company. So they decided to introduce product areas, which I showed you before. Therefore, I will not stop here for a long time. But interesting thing that product areas, they also define through self-design. So after having a workshop where they brainstormed different approaches on how to define product areas, they chose the way of focusing each product area on a specific user persona, as I said before. And after that, they had a session where the product owner of each area pitched their direction, what does it mean, what will be the key features they will be working on, what's the future and strategy for this product area, etc., etc. And they let teams choose which area they want to join. So each sticker here represents a team of 5 to 7 people. And this was the point when they still made a conscious decision to retain the whole company sprint review because they wanted to reinforce that knowledge sharing. So they broke down the company into product areas to simplify the decision making, but they didn't want to stop the free flow of information, and they wanted to reinforce the learning organization. In late 2022, as you see, the company grew much, much bigger. So this was soon after the company was evaluated, like the company became a unicorn, which means a $1 billion evaluation. And we started hiring very actively. So in 1.5 years, the number of people in company grew. I can't even tell the number of people, but in terms of teams, the number of in-house teams grew from 15 to 37. And later to 50. And these were all in-house people, so there was no outsourced teams used. And some time after we started hiring, we were still following the path of whenever we have like 3 or 4 new teams, we kick off the new product area. And this is how we found ourselves in a situation with having already 8 product areas in late 2022. But at some point, we made a conscious thinking process because we understood that we created a self-inflicted wound. So as I said before, every product area had a product director and engineering director, and they had a set of managers reporting to them. Of course, each engineering manager had a few teams they were taking care of as managers. And because of this connection, it suddenly became very difficult to move teams around areas. Whenever, for example, the key product owner, the CTO / co-founder / product owner was making the decision that next quarter we want to invest more into solutions area, which means that we want to put more teams into solutions area, we were starting these conversations around, oh, but this means we will need to change the engineering manager, oh, but this will create stress on the teams, let's avoid this. And we understood that the structure we created prevents us from achieving our optimizational goal. So we made a conscious decision of reducing the number of areas, meaning widening our product definition, and also allowing engineering managers to have teams in different areas, meaning that we consciously made a decision that engineering managers reduce the amount of context they understand about what their teams are doing. Very quick idea on that. So, of course, when we were hiring, like, let's say, 100+ people, we also wanted our optimizational goal to be kept in mind. Therefore, we did 2 important things. First of all, we paid a lot of attention on the mindset of people. We wanted to hire people with strong product mindset, including developers. And we soon realized that people from outsourced companies do not fit us. So our hiring funnel conversion rate was much lower than in typical companies. So we were making much less offers for the same number of interviews as competitors, but we were doing it consciously because we didn't want to hire people who just want to get the list of requirements and convert it into code. We wanted to have people who will consciously go to the user interviews, who will participate in discovery sprints, who will do something else. We also organized the so-called onboarding sprint. So when the people were coming to a company on the same date, we were forming them into cross-functional teams. And there were two things they were expected to do within the first 2 weeks. First of all, to go through all onboarding materials, of course, to better understand the business and the system, and also to deliver some real product backlog items we provided to them, which were chosen by the product owner. And the idea was that by the end of these first 2 weeks in the company, they already show something in the sprint review. Therefore, in these 2 weeks, they don't only read documentation, but they actually feel what it feels to be part of PandaDoc. And we had at least 3 or 4 cases when people reached out to the engineering manager after the onboarding sprint and told them that probably PandaDoc is not the right place for me, which was for us an awesome outcome because we understood it sooner, not later. Late 2023, the company, as I said, we widened the product definition. So instead of 4 areas, we ended up with having only 3. Which means that product areas also got bigger. So we had areas where we had, for example, 10 to 12 teams working on the same product backlog. And this is where this all heavily layered things like multi-team PBRs or multi-team sprint planning started to play. So as you can see, looking at this part, each of these lines is a separate team. So we had, at this point, we had 11 teams going through the same product backlog refinement and through the same sprint planning, which of course required some adaptation of facilitation practices we use, required some adaptation of the preparation work we do. And talking about the optimizational goal, of course, we soon understood that due to the life cycle issues, also due to the challenges that each domain is solving, different domains might need different processes. That's how we found ourselves in like a situation where we, for example, had LESS as our key framework for the company, but one domain was also using the LESS huge, so multi-area LESS. And we also had a small part of the business where we intentionally kept 3 to 4 single team Scrum teams working on different new ideas to be delivered with a dedicated product owner. And we even utilized some team topologist concepts like complex subsystem teams, which were supposed to simplify contribution to our legacy parts of the business. Yeah, and we have a talk on that at the LESS conference channel, so you can check it if you want. It's not a quick overview as I gave you now, but it's more thorough, like 45-something minutes deep dive into 5 years of PandaDoc. Quick overview of my advices. I see many of you are taking photos, so I will show all of them at the same time, not one by one. So if you want to try an evolutionary org design in your company, first, start with revisiting your product definition. Start with revisiting the number of products you have. After you finalize the list of products, or reduce the number of products you have, try to identify the current life stage of each of these products. And this might help you to understand which system optimization goal it might have. Not always. Sometimes the life cycle stage does not automatically dictate the system optimization goal, but I don't have time now to talk about it. I'm already looking at Raul, who is very nervous. Yeah, so when you define the system optimization goals, define the set of key metrics which would help you assess the fulfillment of that goal. For example, when we were aiming for adaptivity, we were not only looking at lead time, we were also looking at the cycle time to first contribution. So how long does it take from working on new feature which the team never saw before until they release something to production. We also looked at our discovery pipeline. So we didn't want all the ideas which enter the discovery pipeline enter towards the delivery. We wanted half of the ideas or more of ideas go to the garbage bin because they don't generate revenue we expect. So we were analyzing the ratio of, so the number of ideas which entered the the discovery, and then the number of ideas which reached the delivery through each stage of discovery process. After you understood the system optimization goal and set of key metrics, try to identify the changes which you may need to apply in order to change your organizational design. And this is where the systems thinking tools can help you, like causal loop diagram or others. And don't consider the results of this experiment as an end goal. Consider it as an interim step. So inspect and adapt it from time to time. Inspect and adapt whether the optimization goal you chose in the past is still relevant today. Inspect and adapt whether the metrics that you defined are still meaningful and whether the numbers of these metrics still make sense. So inspect and adapt your organization the same way you inspect and adapt your processes and your product. That's it. How much time do we have for questions?
1 minute.
1 minute, wow, okay. So, yeah. Thank you. Since we will not be able to answer all questions, in case you have any, I will be around, so you can always approach me. I don't bite.
I saw many changes in 5 years, so to say. How was it with change fatigue of the people in the organization? Because I see you deal with organizational depth when you do these, but it has also be impact on the people.
Yeah, so I think there are two parts of it. First of all, people, especially who were with the company for a long time, they pumped their muscle of change over time. They got more acquainted to frequent changes. And this is also something we were trying out during the interviews when hiring people. But we also consciously had a change management framework in the company, which purpose was to limit the number of changes we are running in the same time. So we had a centralized change management committee, we can call it a change management guild, where we were every quarter pitching the change initiatives we would like and what are the expected outcomes and how does it contribute to our optimization goal. We were choosing only 3, maximum 4 changes for that quarter, and we were reviewing it every 2 weeks. And if we were seeing that the change is moving but it does not produce the results we expect, we were just killing this change and reducing the number of changes happening at the same time.
The question might have been answered right now. How do you, as an organization, how do you inspect and adapt? How do you learn structurally? Who is doing the inspection and adaptation?
Yeah, this is, by the way, a key point. I mentioned that when we were changing the initial structure of the company, we involved people from different levels, not only from C level or C-1, but also from teams level. And ideally, in a company which is conscious about inspection and adaptation of itself, you want to have some kind of people who are passionate about it, who are working on it. But when it comes to end responsibility, of course, the end responsibility lies on the C level, because C-level are people who are responsible for the company's success, and we are doing inspection and adaptation of org design in order to raise the bar of success, not to stay at the same point. So the final responsibility lies on the CEO, CTO, and C-level people, I would say. But they need to engage others into that process. And by the way, that change management framework I mentioned was part of that effort.
Denis?
Yeah, thank you very much. As I said, we'll be happy to answer your questions. And thank you for joining. I hope you didn't regret it.